Hello everybody, what we're doing today is we are playing games. More and more games. This time with the Asus VivoMini PC. And I'm going to do just a gameplay slash review video on this unit. So what the Asus VivoMini PC is it's a small form factor PC, I shouldn't say small, I should say tiny form factor PC. It fits almost in the palm of my hand. I can palm it, but, and I'll put a picture of it right up here, it is quite tiny, and it uses all laptop parts in it, and that is how it keeps its form factor so tiny. And it uses the Intel Core i5 Haswell series chip, so it's a 4000 CPU or 4000 series Intel CPU. And if you know anything about hardware, Intel just came out with its 1100 series. It's so hard to be able to like refer to it off the top of my head because I don't exactly know how to pronounce the name of it yet, but it's the 11th generation of Intel series processors they just came out with for their mobile platform, and this is the 4th generation. So we're 7 generations behind, but if we can play Moonlighter, we should be able to play most games with decent frame rate. I really enjoy Moonlighter, and if you have watched any of my videos before, well, any of my recent videos at least, you should know that I really do enjoy this game. And yeah, basically how I benchmark indie game performance is I play Moonlighter first, because Moonlighter actually doesn't play smoothly on everything, as we saw with our previous playing games with this PC video, which is where I used a 13-inch Toshiba laptop, and Moonlighter didn't perform all that well. And it used an Intel Celeron processor. This guy doesn't use just a Celeron, of course, he uses an Intel Core i5 series, albeit, like I said, a laptop CPU that uses 15 watts. And the Intel integrated Intel integrated graphics for Intel processors series of GPUs. So Moonlighter runs pretty well. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Next up is Fight and Rage. Now, I'm going to bring up that Toshiba laptop that I just brought up before that had the Intel Celeron processor in it. It could only run this game at 30 frames per second. It was a very constant, very smooth 30 frames per second. And it could probably actually run this game at about 45, but the game, it automatically detects the performance and it lowers it to the most ideal FPS for the smoothest possible experience. Here, with the Core i5 Haswell generation ULV processor, a 15-watt processor, Fight and Rage is pretty confident that 60 frames per second is what it can run at, and it is very smooth and very nice. So Moonlighter, of course, was a good indication at just by itself that this game was going to run very well. But I'm very, very pleased with these results indeed. Fight and Rage is also a very fun indie game if you ever picked it up or gave it a glance but didn't actually think that it was going to be, you know, that fun of a game. I assure you, it's a pretty enjoyable little title. So another thing that's cool about the Asus VivoMini PC, if I didn't cover this before while we were playing Moonlighter, is it has mounts on it so that you can screw it in to the back of your monitor, so that it's completely out of the way, which is a nifty little feature of it, I would say. Oh, whoops, I did wrong. What's kind of confusing about it, though, is that, at least for this particular unit that I have, is that I can't get the sound to work through the audio jack. So I've plugged my speakers into it, I've plugged my headphones into it. The only way you can get sound out of it is if you're getting sound outputted through the HDMI port. Now I am using HDMI for this demonstration, but I don't have the speakers for the monitor turned on. But just so you know, if you get an Asus VivoMini PC, you may be stuck with audio through HDMI, and it may not be easy to get to work. Hey, Fight and Rage runs and looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and see what the next game can do for us. So we're happy to see that all of the indie games run perfectly smoothly at 60 FPS, but now it's time for a true test of the two-dimensional rendering capabilities of an integrated GPU. This is Rayman Origins, and as we can see, it's not going at a perfect S60 all the time. It is quite not smooth, and the game does slow down. Wow, we're getting down below 40 there. And when the game does go down below that magical number of 60 FPS, the game itself slows down to match. So that's not that cool. Although, if you're playing a part of the game that requires some twitch mechanics and very specific timing, then maybe it's for the better. I don't know. It'll help the game go a little easier. But let's go ahead and lower the resolution. See if we can, there we go. Let's lower the resolution and see if we can get a little bit smoother of an experience. And here we are now at 720p in Rayman Origins, and as you can see, perfectly smooth. All we had to do was lower the resolution quite a bit. But we are getting that perfect refresh rate matching number. So the takeaway from this is, yeah, it can do pretty much any 2D game that you can throw at it. I mean, it doesn't get any more complicated than Rayman. So games like Limbo or I don't know, whatever else, are going to run perfectly smoothly on this mini PC for you. Now, let's go ahead and try some more GPU-intensive games. For our first serious 3D game, we're going to be playing some Marvel vs. Capcom, and that's our first real disappointment for the video 2. We've got about less than 60 frames per second, about 40, and the game is actually, it's slowing down. So I can't guarantee you it'll slow down in the online mode, if it'll even let you play in the online mode. Some PCs won't let you play in the online, or some games, I should say, won't let you play in the online mode if your frame rate isn't up to snuff. I know Killer Instinct won't let you do it until you benchmark your PC, and if your PC can't do 60 frames per second, it won't let you go online, so that's a bit of a bummer. But here we're doing the offline mode, and we're getting a less than perfectly smooth experience, and because we're getting a less than perfectly smooth experience, the game itself is slowing down a little bit. So this is 720p at the lowest detail settings possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower it from 720p down to 800 by 600. And see if that will give us a perfectly smooth experience so that we can then maybe take online. I don't know if the game will prevent you from going online, but if it doesn't prevent you from going online, it will certainly be a lot more of a not smooth experience. And now we're playing at 800 by 600. At, of course, the lowest detail settings possible, and we are getting that magical 60 FPS number. So yeah, and it is perfectly smooth. This is actually great. This is just fine. Of course, it's 800 by 600 with the lowest detail settings possible, but playing the game, perfectly fine. Perfectly smooth. Loving it. Digging it. It's awesome. Hey, let's move on to something a little bit more complicated, perhaps? Alright, here's a game that I recently featured in my Game Train series. This is Horizon Chase Turbo. It's a very simple 3D game. And as you can see, the integrated graphics for the Core i5 ULV processor handles it very, very well. This is going at a perfectly smooth 60 FPS. Now I gotta warn you, even though this is 1080p, the menus don't go all that well. The menus kind of skip around a bit, but that doesn't matter though. As long as this part of the game goes at a perfectly smooth frame rate, the menus can just do whatever they want. I also wanted to tell you how upgradable the Asus VivoMini PC is. Now it does have all laptop parts in it, so the upgrade parts are going to be a little bit more expensive. But there is room for upgrading inside of that cover. It's got 2 slots for RAM. One of the slots is taken with, of course, the 4GB DDR3 stick, and you can put another 4 gigs or maybe even 2 8-gig sticks of DDR3 in it, so you can have a total of 16 gigs if you want, or more if you really want, but I don't know why you'd want to put 32 gigs in this thing, since it can't do a lot, because the system performance of this guy isn't that fantastic, so I don't think you'd want to put it to use to do a lot of office stuff, like Excel spreadsheets and things of that nature. The Core i5 would just sort of kind of choke on a little bit of that, big old Excel spreadsheets or maybe a PowerPoint. But for the most part, you know, it's a pretty capable general use machine for browsing the internet, having lots of tabs. Of course, depends on how much memory you have. So if you do put an extra 4 gig stick in there, bump it up to, you know, 8 gigs of DDR3 memory, I think you'd actually be pretty well off, and maybe these menus would be a little bit smoother too. Like I said, the menus are not that great looking, and I don't know why this game can't render these menus at 60 frames per second. Then you go into the actual gameplay itself, and it's going at a perfectly smooth 60. Like here, it's actually going at a very smooth frame rate as well. So yeah, that's probably just a lack of video memory, you know, switching the textures in and out of VRAM. It's got to do it pretty quickly, so that would drag down the frame rates a significant amount, I guess. And I guess that's just what happens. So maybe putting more system memory in would actually make that go a little bit smoother. I didn't have a great start to this race. Don't yell at me in the comments section, please. But yeah, trying to play and talk at the same time, this game is very, very difficult. No more doing that. But yeah, Horizon Chase Turbo, totally play it on this PC all the time. Of course, I did say in my review that you absolutely almost have to have a high refresh rate monitor to get the most out of this game, and I still stand by that fact. Hey, let's move on to something even more complicated than this. And here's where things get a little disappointing. This is Road Redemption. I featured this game in a few of the other playing games with this notebook or PC or whatever video, and it's a pretty fun little homage to Road Rash 3D, and it's actually a really enjoyable gameplay. I still enjoy picking it up every once in a while and just getting some experience points to buff out my, not necessarily my character, but my profile a little bit more. So we're just gonna play through this game for a little while. And if you guys want to know more about the 3D performance of this particular PC, I'm gonna actually, there's some 3D Mark footage going on right above me right now, and with a score, hopefully. Yes, there it is. There's the score, and that should give you a good idea of just what this thing can do compared to some other machines. But Night Raid, I gotta tell you, that benchmark was not even worth running. That's the DirectX 11 3D Mark benchmark. Road Redemption, very disappointing. This is 720p DirectX 9 compatibility mode at the lowest detail settings possible, and we're getting less than 30 FPS. This is playable, at least it's consistent and it's not stuttering like too terribly horribly, But yeah, it's not that great of an experience. And when you're in a situation where it's going to take some twitch maneuvering to get out of a sticky situation, you're gonna die. Now, I love to test some Blizzard games on this thing, but unfortunately it only has a 32 gig SSD in it right now, so not a lot of space for everything. Like Overwatch, Diablo 3, those all take up many gigs, and the games that I'm running right now take up not a lot of gigs. So installing those would just be a huge pain. But you can put higher rated SSDs in it that are mSATA, and they might even be able to perform a little bit better. Hopefully they would. I would assume that they would. If you can put something in there that does about 550 megabytes a second read-write, you know, really get the most out of SATA interface as you possibly can. But it's not the same size as all typical ones are. It's going to be the smaller form factor ones, and I can't think off the top of my head what the name of the form factor is, but if I can figure it out, I'll post it right here in this part of the video. But yeah, that's about it for upgradability. It's got that extra RAM slot, and you can put a different SSD in it. So, hey, that's enough of Road Redemption. I hope you guys now have a pretty good idea of the capability of this Asus Mini PC as far as gaming is concerned, and maybe some outside of gaming stuff too. Oops, I'm shooting a good guy, but I don't care. I'm going to quit this game anyway. Hey, this has been Playing Games with the Asus Mini PC here on the Game Train. Thanks for watching, and you guys have a good night.